For almost 20 years, this was a deal that just seemed impossible. Two of the world's biggest democracies kind of walked in a stalemate. But now it's happened. The mother of all deals between the EU and India has finally been signed. So what's actually inside, and why is everyone calling it a game changer for global trade? Let's get into it. 110%. No, that's not a typo. That was the huge, massive tax, the tariff, that India used to slap on European luxury cars. It was basically a giant trade wall that made them almost impossible to sell. Well, this deal is about to tear that wall right down. And when the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, calls it the mother of all deals, you know this is serious. And she's right. This isn't just another boring trade agreement. We're talking about a historic moment that could literally reshape the global economic map. But okay, what's really behind all the hype? Let's dive into the details and really see what makes this deal so incredibly historic. Just think about it for a second. You've got the EU, this economic powerhouse of 27 nations, and then you have India, with its absolutely booming population of over 1.4 billion people. This is so much more than just a trade pact. It's a strategic alliance between the world's two largest democracies. When you put them together, they're creating a free trade zone of 2 billion people. That represents a quarter of the entire world's GDP. This isn't just a deal. It's the creation of one of the largest single markets on the planet. Okay, so the scale is just massive. We get that. But what's actually in the fine print? Well, the biggest change, the real headline, is the slashing of those tariffs. Let's take a look at how this tariff wall is being torn down. Just look at these numbers. They're wild. 150% tax on wine made it an extreme luxury item in India. Now, that's dropping to as low as 20%. And check out olive oil. That tariff is going from up to 45% all the way down to 0. For European food and drink producers, this is a golden ticket into a massive new market. And here it is, the big one. That 110% tariff on cars we talked about, it's being slashed to just 10%. Now, there is a little catch. It only applies to the first 250,000 cars each year. But still, that's a massive, massive win for European car manufacturers. So what's the bottom line here? Well, the EU figures that all these tariff cuts are going to save European companies about 4 billion euros every single year. That's enough cash to fund thousands of new jobs and really drive a new wave of innovation. Okay, so it's obviously a fantastic deal for Europe. The trade is a two-way street, right? What about India? Let's take a look at what they're getting out of this whole thing. For the EU, it really boils down to one word: access. We're talking privileged access to a gigantic new market for their cars, their machinery, and their food. There's even talk they could double their exports to India in less than a decade. And for India, wow, a flood of new opportunities. Almost all of their exports to the EU, we're talking 99%, will be duty-free right from day one. That's a huge boost for their textile and jewelry industries. Plus, cheaper European machinery will help power their own manufacturing boom. But look, this wasn't a one-sided victory. Both sides fought hard to protect their most sensitive industries, things like EU beef and Indian steel. This was a true compromise, which honestly is a big reason it took so long to get done. So that raises a pretty good question. If this deal is so great for everyone, why on earth did it take almost 20 years to actually happen? Let's take a quick look at the long and winding road that led to this historic agreement. So this journey actually started way back in 2007, but the talks fell apart pretty quickly. Things went quiet for years. It wasn't until 2022 that they were really revived, finally leading to the breakthrough we see today. So what was the holdup? Well, it was kind of like trying to solve a giant, incredibly complicated jigsaw puzzle. The two sides had to agree on absolutely everything, from financial services to investment protection to how skilled workers could move between the two markets. It just took years and years of painstaking negotiations to finally get all the pieces to fit. So the deal is signed, the ink is dry. But what happens next? This isn't really the end of the story. It's actually just the beginning of a whole new chapter in the relationship between the EU and India. You see, the EU and India were already doing a ton of business together. But this deal, this is like pouring rocket fuel on an already roaring fire. It's going to completely supercharge their trade relationship and take it to a whole new level. And you have to understand, this is about so much more than just money. It's about power. In a world that feels more and more unstable, the EU and India are joining forces, creating a new pole of stability and democracy. So, what are we really looking at here? Is this the new blueprint for global trade? A model for how democracies can work together to build a more prosperous and stable world? Or is this just a one-off deal, a unique moment of cooperation in a world that seems to be pulling apart? The answer to that question will probably shape the 21st century.